In today's show, it's the trade value episode, running through every player on the Blazers roster, from least tradable to most tradable and everything in the middle. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. Listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen, coming at you Monday through Friday, each and every weekday. So make it a part of your daily routine, make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. Today's show is the trade value rankings episode. This is an idea fully lifted from Bill Simmons 20 years ago. Full disclosure, I am not a big Simmons podcast listener in these days, but I was a voracious Simmons reader in my youth. And when I was a teenager, I was printing out his articles from page 2 to share them with my friends. He was a big part of the sort of fandom for people of my generation, his voice and his way of writing, and then his trade value rankings. So basically what it is he would run through the whole league and rank players based on, who is the most, if they were on the market, based on their age, their skill set, their contract, whether or not they were members of the Boston Celtics, their trade value. So I've done this in the past, but I think it's been a few years since we've truly done it. So we're going to run through every player on the Blazers roster and rank them by trade value. This is like my subjective list, and if you got complaints, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com is the place to do that, or just if you're a YouTube listener, y'all know where to complain. It's right there in the comments section. Not worried about y'all. But this is subjective based on my opinion of performance, of the player's age, of their contract situation, and what I sort of generally think around the league. I'm not going to pretend to be super plugged in here, but I have some educated guesses about trades, values, and all that. The person at the bottom of the list is the only player on the team that cannot be traded. It's Skylar Mays, and that's where we'll start. Skylar Mays has the least trade value on the Blazers roster because based on when his contract was converted from a two-way contract to a full-length NBA deal, he's not going to be on the team for the 6 months that it would take him to be traded before the February 8th trade deadline. So Skylar Mays, not getting traded. I guess potentially could get waived. He has a partially guaranteed deal. $850,000 of his $1.8 million is guaranteed, and he gets paid after. He'll get paid after that. And if he's on the team after January 10th, he's on the team regardless. But Skylar Mays, zero trade value because he cannot be traded. In the spirit of Bill Simmons, I've also labeled my categories, which is a very Simmons thing to do. And so, shout out to the OG and the good people at page 2. If you don't know what page 2 is, look it up, youth, or perhaps slightly older person. Okay, the minimum throw-ins after you get Skylar Mays and after Skylar Mays is Ish Wainwright and Moses Brown. I don't think they have standalone value. I don't even think they're sweeteners to make a trade more enticing. It's just like if you need to make the money work and you need minimum money to do so, 1.9 for Ish Wainwright and 2.1 million for Mo Brown. That's the minimum money to make it work. They're not no standalone value, no intrigue, just players that if you for purely financial reasons, if you need to make it happen, you can make it happen with those two gentlemen. Then from there, we move to the next category, young sweeteners. These are players who don't make enough money to be standalone tradable. When you think about trade value, some of it is like, what can you get back? And when players don't make very much money, it's hard to get back stuff. Obviously, there's another world in which DeAndre Ayton exists, and you just make too much money, and you are not tradable in the other direction. But think about if you're trading for a veteran, most sort of you're trying to get to that like mid-level money type of range. So that's between about 10 million and 15 million bucks. Well, if you make $1 million, it takes a lot of you to cobble together to get up to $10 million. Like trades are hard to craft, starting with guys who aren't making a bunch of money. It doesn't mean that they aren't interesting and intriguing. It just means that their value in and of themselves, because they're not easy to put into a trade, and they're not so overwhelmingly talented that they would have intrigue beyond just the financial stuff, because you're trading for contracts very often. That's what John Hollinger says, and he's right. But like, these guys are sweeteners. These would be these could make a trade more appealing by the inclusion of these 3 players. I've got 3 players. I don't exactly know how I would rank them. I have them ranked like this: Chris Murray, Rayan Rupert, Jabari Walker. Those I'm pretty flexible with those. Very soft on those rankings. Murray, he looks like he's a competitive defensive player and has shot better since starting the season, basically unable to shoot. Rayan Rupert we haven't seen, but he's been pretty decent in the G League, particularly as a shooter. We'll see what he becomes. He's so young that he has some like upside, and you just trade for upside. And Jabari Walker is a second round pick who looks like he's going to be an NBA role player. It's just, what is his ceiling? And he's a pretty serious negative on offense right now, but he's a competitive defensive player. He's improved a lot from year 1 to year 2 and some change, year 2 and 25 games. So it is, I think, if you're concocting a trade and you're saying, hey, we have our eye on this young player, Murray and Rupert and Jabari Walker might help you get over the finish line. But in terms of standalone value, those gentlemen don't have a lot of standalone value on their own. The next one I want to talk about, and I'll spend a little time to close this segment, is a tricky one. It's under the heading, maybe there's a less desirable contract. DeAndre Ayton's making too much money for his production. And the idea was that he was going to get to Portland outside of the shackles of the desert, free from the weight of being the number 1 pick in Phoenix, a place where he didn't fit with his coworkers and didn't fit with the coach and needed to be free from the front office and get himself away and spread his wings. And in Portland, he's been worse. Part of it has been worse because the team doesn't have good spacing around him to give him space that he needs to play. Part of it has been worse because he seems like a player who would thrive with better teammates. When he had really good teammates in Phoenix, he was a better basketball player. He has worse teammates in Portland. He's not thriving. And part of it is because DeAndre Ayton doesn't always seem like he's playing very hard. And I think that has been more noticeable deeper into the season. Or in fact, early in the year, you can go back and play the tape. I was surprised with how little he was getting on offense in terms of production and shots and all of those things, with how hard he consistently played, with the effort he consistently gave. And I said, like, hey, this is commendable that he plays with this sort of juice. Since he's come back, particularly from his injury, it's like he's just not fully engaged in the game, which was kind of the knock on him coming out of Phoenix. It was the red flag coming out from leaving the Suns. That's maybe why they didn't want to pay him in general. And it's not a ton of games. It might just be a bad week, just be, bad, whatever's going on in his life is not great right now, and he'll figure it out because these people are humans. But like, he hasn't been good. He has not been good. He hasn't been objectively bad, but he did not take off. He has been worse than his career production with the Blazers for a variety of factors that I just laid out. And then you get to the money. He's owed $32.5 million this year. So even trading for DeAndre Ayton this year, you're going to have to come up with $30 million. Is there a team that values the center position at what DeAndre Ayton is, which is like somewhere in the league average range for centers, making $32 million? Okay, just getting to that money seems like a lot. I don't think teams, just in general, teams value superstar centers, like the top tier MVP centers, of which there are a couple in the league, highly. Throw in, Sabonis and whatever position you think Giannis Antetokounmpo plays, and like big players get paid. But they're different. They're different than what DA has been. So $32 million this year, and then 34 next year, and 35.5 the year after that. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's value out there. I do not think he is tradable on his own, because I think the Blazers are the team that took the risk and have not, 25 games in. So a long way to go. In fact, potentially like 100, roughly 200 more games. But 200, maybe 225 if he plays all the regular season games. But like, he has not played himself into to be a more valuable asset, and he was basically salary dumped by his prior team. So and they absorbed Yusuf Nurkic, who I don't think had a bunch of trade value in and of himself. His value was that he could get you the money to make it right to get off of DeAndre Ayton. So maybe like I said, this is the category. Maybe there's a less desirable contract out there, but that's what you'd be trading for, a less desirable contract. We'll see. Like I said, 25 games in, it's been maybe 10 days of him looking kind of maybe a week of him looking kind of but like he's looked that way. And when you have a certain reputation and then you start to look that way, folks like me start to get, raise our eyebrows. It hasn't been a good recent stretch for DA, and you couple that with his salary, and that's why he's that low on the list in terms of trade value. I don't think you're getting back much of anything useful for him right now. So what you got to hope is that you can rehabilitate this and make a roster that fits better around him and get more out of him, and all the things that you thought might happen in the first 25 games that haven't. Hopefully in the next 60, they can get something that fits for everybody's doing better. The Blazers are doing better and DA's doing better, and it's just more valuable for all involved, because I'm sure DA doesn't want to play poorly. I'm sure he would love to love to spread his wings like he probably thought he was going to be able to here. Haven't seen much dominating. Okay, we got other folks, the second half of the roster that we'll tackle in the second and third segments, starting with a category called, well, they would have been valuable. Let's talk about would have been valuable here in the second segment. But first, I want to tell you about building a championship team. You know who knows about building a championship team? eBay Motors. And Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd, which each and every week, Joshy, my man, is going to bring you the best fantasy picks all season long, whether you're prepping for your daily fantasy or scouring the waiver wire for a season-long team every week right here. I'm going to provide you with the players that are guaranteed to fit your roster as recommended by Josh and the good folks at eBay Motors. This eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Josh has got some names this week to know, including Brandon Podziemski of the Golden State Warriors. You've seen him a couple times recently when the Blazers have faced off with Golden State, and like he's moved into the starting lineup. He fills up the stat sheet. He rebounds. He passes. He fits really well playing next to Steph. He's a young player for the first time ever that Steve Kerr has trusted. And as Josh points out, Pods looks comfortable as a starter for the Warriors and widely available in fantasy leagues. He contributes across the board. Defensive stats, rebounds, points. He can shoot it. He's getting big minutes. He is not available prior to doing this ad read. I checked in my league, not available in my league, but could be available in yours. And Pods could be the person who flips your week, flips your season. Check it out. Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle, and with over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Whether you need brake kits or LED headlights, or if you need a new roof rack, you need to update or upgrade your bumpers, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's going to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, with these prices, you're burning rubber, baby, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. It's eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right. As we roll along with our trade value ranking show, the next group we've got is the would have been valuable group. Two players in the would have been valuable group, Rob Williams and Matisse Thybulle. I thought about ranking Williams below DeAndre Ayton, but I kind of feel like Williams could have some let's take a risk, and the less guaranteed money into the future matters. Like that legitimately is a real thing. Like the money matters, and Rob doesn't have, Rob's only making an $11.5 million this year, and he's set for 12.5 the following season, and then 13.5 after that. Like, it's long-term money, but it's not 30-some million dollars. It's real that Rob Williams' career is looking I don't know, in jeopardy is probably too strong of a word, but it is real that he has had a bunch of injuries. That is just undeniable. So some of my sort of consternation, my struggles with this is like, I don't think a team's going to trade for Rob Williams this season, but I do think there is a world in which they could take a flyer on him ahead of DeAndre Ayton. I don't feel super good about that prediction, but I think both of them are not going to get traded, and DeAndre needed his own space, and these rankings are soft anyways. Healthy Rob Williams was going to be very, very tradable, and that's the point of this category. He was going to be very, very tradable. Whether the Blazers traded him was a whole nother question, but he is a very high level defensive player. Even though he's doesn't have any range on offense, his ability to pass and be a hub and offensive rebound, he can be a positive player on offense despite a really limited, individual offense. And he can roll to the rim and can be a lob threat and all of those things. But he's hurt, out for the season, and hopefully he'll be back to being an NBA player again next year. But he's had a lot of injuries the last couple seasons, and it is. That is a concern, and it drives down sort of just for these rankings, drastically drops you. The other guy here is Matisse Thybulle, and not because he's bad. Matisse Thybulle's been straight up good. He would just be higher on this list if he didn't have the situation he has contract-wise. He signed as a restricted free agent, he signed an offer sheet with the Mavericks, and then the Blazers chose to match it. And when a team matches your offer sheet, you are granted for 1 year the right to veto any trade. It's essentially a de facto no trade clause. So Matisse can choose where he goes, basically, and that drives down his trade value. If he could be traded anywhere, he's shooting, in his Blazers career, pushing up 40% from three. He's an impactful defender, can guard multiple positions, is on a very reasonable 3 for $33 million deal. He's got a trade kicker, so he gets a little, the money goes up a little bit if he gets traded, but it's like if you could trade Matisse Thybulle to anywhere and you could trade him to a good team who's trying to chase a championship, they would trade for him because he looks like he could be that, whether he's like a big high level playoff contributor is another thing, but could he conceivably give you some reasonable minutes, and he's on a really reasonable contract? He would be highly tradable, but because he gets to choose where he goes, his trade value is diminished a little bit. I don't anticipate the Blazers necessarily needing or wanting to trade Thybulle. They certainly don't have to, but he would have more value for them if he didn't have the specific contract situation that he does. They don't need to trade him. I'll be to be clear, they don't need to. They could, and if they could find a place that he wants to go and get value for him, then great. But if another team knows that Thybulle gets to, choose where he goes, they're not going to offer up the fattest package for him. So that's going to drive down his value. Okay. This is the too cheap to trade. It's one player in this one. We're down to the one player heading. Too cheap to trade, Toumani Camara. Just too cheap to trade. He's a really impactful defender as a rookie. The advanced impact stats suggest that he's just straight up very good on defense, and is able to be at least close to a positive player despite being pretty bad on offense. But you've got him under contract. He's under a 4-year, fully non-guaranteed deal. He's really appealing if you have him on your team. It's just too cheap to trade. The Blazers aren't getting back value for him because of how little money he makes. If he was making more money and you could trade him for someone making more cash than that with a bigger contract, be more valuable to another team. It's do they have a rookie that they would flip for Toumani? Because that's he's making rookie money, minimum second round money. If it was different, if his contract was different, he would have some real value. I don't think the Blazers are going to trade him. We're into that point where I don't think the Blazers are going to trade Toumani. I think that he's a real find and a real get from the trade with Phoenix, and has some real value in the near and medium and maybe even long term, because he's already pretty impactful. And if he adds more to his offense, he can be a really good basketball player. But he's it's just this contract thing, too cheap to trade. He's more than a sweetener. He's more than a young player. He's like an interesting young like defender. Like he's freaking guarding Steph Curry pretty darn well against the Warriors. Every team in the league could use a guy who, even if he only plays 16 to 19 minutes a game, it's like in those 16, 19 minutes, you can stick him on Steph Curry. You can stick him on big wings. You can stick him on point guards. He can guard across the board. And you can just say, okay, that will be at least competitive. We'll be competitive there, and we'll figure out the rest from there. If Tumani was making more money, and eventually he will be, hopefully for him, he will have real value on the trade market. For now, it's just not the right type of cash. But he could be a heck of a sweetener if they find a deal. Heck of a sweetener. Again, I don't think they're going to trade him necessarily. Okay. Let's take a quick break, come back, and we have 5 more names on this list. 5 more names. We'll close it out with the final 5 names. But first, I want to tell you about buying last-minute tickets. Last-minute tickets. No better place to do it than on the Gametime app. The Blazers, they're going to go out on the road January 1st for a 7-game road trip. They're gone for a very long time. So you are listening to Tuesday, December 19th show. If between now and January 1st you want to go see the Blazers, you're going to have a handful of opportunities to do so. And if you don't decide until the very last minute, that's great. Because Gametime is the number one spot for last-minute tickets. They're an app built to sell you tickets when you procrastinate. What I like about it is because what you see is what you get. When you open up the phone, you search Trailblazers, you open up the app, you search Trailblazers, you get a map of the Moda Center, and you get, say, this ticket right here. It's going to cost you $125 to sit in good seats downstairs. No hidden fees, no convenience charges, nothing. You don't pay extra to have them email it to you. They just email it to you in a couple of clicks, and what you pay is what you get. So, why take the guesswork, take the hassle out of buying last minute tickets? Head over to the Gametime app, download it, and when you do, put in the promo code LOCKEDONNBA and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the app. Use that redemption code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. You got $20 off your purchase. That's Gametime. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, still past first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's talk about the final 5 names on this trade value ranking list. This is where it gets dicey for me. I feel comfortable that everyone else is kind of roughly in the right range in terms of tiers. You know, I hemmed and hawed a little bit about what to do with Rob Williams because he's just like not going to play basketball again until the fall. But beyond hemming and hawing, I feel comfortable with everyone is there in the grand scheme. When you get here, it's some of this is the eyes of the beholder. Some of this is the things you all, dear listeners, will disagree with. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com. Next category is what I call the protected first category, and that's Malcolm Brogdon. Blazers trade Malcolm Brogdon. What they can expect back is something like a protected first. You're gonna have to make the money work. And so, he's making $20 million, or $22 million, $22.5 million, excuse me. He's under contract for next season. So he has value because if you're going to trade for him at the trade deadline, you get 2 playoff runs with Malcolm Brogdon. You trade for him in February, you get a playoff run from this season, and then you can have him next season, and then he'll be a free agent if you want. So you could get 2 playoff runs, a veteran team that looking to upgrade the value of two chances to make your push with Brog. Much more appealing than a expiring contract, the way the league works. I mean, for most teams, some teams expiring would have more value. It's obviously context based, but I think for a lot of teams, the 2 playoff run trade is really valuable for Brogdon. And I think there is, he is the only player on this team that I say they have to trade. They have to. They have too many guards that need to play minutes. Right now, there's no way to reward Scoot Henderson for playing well, because there's veterans in front of him and young veterans in front of him that have to play. So even if he plays really well, there's no way to kind of close with him and put out a reasonable lineup that isn't messy and like basically benches Brogdon and causes all types of politics when Brogdon is just like straight up better than Scoot. and gets treated like that by NBA defenses, et cetera, et cetera. But Malcolm Brogdon, if, on the trade market, he can help veteran teams. He could help teams that are kind of one guard away. He could be a bench player. I think that's the thing is he's a sixth man of the year. He's comfortable coming off the bench. So you're not going to trade for a guy that you have to shoehorn into the starting lineup. He can score. His best skill is as a scorer. He can pass a little bit, can defend a little bit, and has played in high level basketball games. He struggled a little bit for the Celtics in the playoffs last year, but has played in high level basketball games with a couple different teams. He's helpful, and if the Blazers can trade him for a lightly protected or lottery protected first round pick, I think his value is not too dissimilar from what Josh Hart's value was when the Blazers traded him for a Cam Reddish type young flyer and then a draft pick. I think Brogdon is probably in that same range, maybe a little better because of the score, because he can really score, but point guard probably less valuable position to trade for. Okay, next title is combo guards. This is Anfernee Simons. Combo guards just don't have a ton of value, but Anfernee Simons, he's been really good on offense. He can be a really, really high level scorer. Everyone says why don't they bring Ant off the bench? The goal for the Blazers is to have a good enough team that Anfernee Simons can comfortably come off the bench. It's always the plan with CJ McCollum. It's what if you built a good enough team that it made sense to make him into a sixth man? Simons has kind of graduated to that level. He's not a top tier A1 lead guy, but he's good enough on offense to score against any team in the league in a variety of ways. He's improved as an attacker, improved as a playmaker, gets himself to the free throw line more often. His gravity helps everyone on offense. He's 24 years old. He's under contract for 3 more seasons. If his archetype had more value, Anfernee Simons would be at the top of that list. Anfernee Simons is straight up better than Jordan Poole. I don't even want to bring up the Tyler Hero thing, but he's certainly in that same range. I think a lot of folks think Hero's better. I kind of think Ant's better, but I think it's close. Neither of those two gentlemen have had much trade value. You know how I know that? Because the Miami Heat been trying to trade Tyler Hero for 3 years. If that type of player had trade value, Tyler Hero would play for another team, and Anfernee Simons is in that same boat. And if you think he's a little worse, then he has a little less trade value. If you think he's a little better, then he has a little more trade value. But I don't think you're getting back a star package for him because he's not a star. I don't think you're getting back this great deal. I think he is more valuable to the Blazers as just the dude who can go score and props up the offense and makes things easier than he is as the player who you can trade and upgrade the roster. Hopefully he grows into that, or hopefully he might not grow into that. He might always be this. I think, moreover, it is easier to trade Malcolm Brogdon with this season and next at age 31 and get a protected first-round pick. What if Anfernee Simons' trade value is exactly the same? Well, trading a 24-year-old who you gave a $100 million contract to with this year and 2 seasons remaining, so 2.5 years left, 2 3/4 years left in his deal, trading that player for a protected first-round pick is just not good asset management. You're not doing a good job. So the trade, for the Blazers, it makes more sense to hold on to Ant and hope he grows into something than take. The market has spoken on what kind of that type of player is, and Ant. Why fight the market, I guess, is my point here. My next category, helpful but pricey. We're in the top 3. We've hit the top 3 range. Helpful but pricey. Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant is the perfect skill set to be the 4th best player on an NBA team. Perfect skill set. He's not an elite point of attack defender, but he can be an engaged help defender, and he can guard in isolation against guys his size. I think that's his best skill, actually, is not as a help defender, but as a hey, you're 6'8", you're in isolation, and the ball's right in front of Jeremy Grant, and he can guard someone who's not going to just blow by him with quickness. And he's a bucket. He gets to the free throw line. He's a really good catch and shoot shooter. He's having a great shooting season yet again. He scores in isolation. Sometimes he takes way too many ISO jumpers in any individual game, but he can help his positional, the positional need of someone who's a 4, stretchy 4, has value in the league. He does a rebound, but there's look around the league, there's plenty of dudes who don't rebound and play power forward in the NBA these days. It's a position that the league kind of killed. They stylistically murdered the power forward position. Grant could help good teams win. He's just paid not like the fourth best player. He's played like a 2-3 cusp. His money isn't outrageous in the new world of the CBA into the future, but it is a lot of Jeremy Grant. 27.5 this year, 29.7, 32, 34.2, and a player option for 36.5. That's a lot of money. It's 2 years when he's age 32 season, age 33 season in 26, 27, and then 27, 28. That's just a lot of Jeremy Grant. So if you're trading for him, you're not trading for 2 playoff runs. You're trading for 4 years. And I think that drives down his value a little bit. I was on Nate Duncan's podcast at the beginning of the season. He was convinced that Jeremy Grant both had trade value and would be traded. I don't feel as strongly. Nate's super smart. That's why I shout him out here. But I don't feel that strongly. I think he has maybe somewhat limited trade value because I don't love the contract. And I don't think, whereas Brogdon needs to be traded because of the positional logjam, if Jeremy Grant gets traded, they're in trouble in a hurry. Because of just because of who they have at forward. The depth is not there. It's a lot of Jabari Walker and Toumani Camara. And you could argue that for the final 20 games of the season, that doesn't really matter. And who they get back might be able to play, et cetera, et cetera. And I might agree with you, but I just think it's not as dire for them to do it. And Jeremy Grant will have trade value into the future because he's under contract for a long time. I don't think they have to trade him. And I don't think necessarily... when they gave him all that money, I don't think he had some leverage to get all that money, but I don't think this was like a flippy type contract. I think this was he'll be part of this core because we need talent, but eventually he's going to the timeline stuff with Scoot and Shaedon's going to matter more when they're actually good. And if you're bad, the timeline doesn't really matter, but Jeremy Grant's, 10 years older than them. And that is something that could come up in the future. And I think he could help good teams. He has trade value out there. It's just the money is, another team's going to have to want a lot of Jeremy Grant to make that deal. Final 2 spots, you could have guessed them. The Blazers players with the highest trade value in my mind are Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe. 2 dudes they're not going to trade. These are cornerstones. I know that your neighbor probably told you that Scoot's a bust. You got one of those basketball neighbors. They see you taking your recycling bins out, or maybe they see you if you live in an apartment, they see you in the mail room, and hey, Mike, Scoot's a bust. All right, cool. That person doesn't think Scoot's trade value is that high. I think it's still very, 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 very high. He's 19. You've got, not only do you have 3 more years under this rookie contract. For rookies, they're restricted free agents. They don't even get to actually go into free agency. They're under team control for up to 8 more seasons, up to 8 or 9 more seasons, depending on what kind of contract you want to give them. But if you trade for them and you want them on your team, they're there for a long time. Trading for a 19-year-old that you can have on a contract for 9 years is a pretty good deal. Trading for a 20-year-old to get under a contract for 9 years is a pretty good deal. I guess for Shaedon Sharpe, it's only 7 and some change. So, I think Scoot's going to be really good. I think Shaedon Sharpe's going to be darn good too. Neither of them have really hit it in stride with consistency. Scoot has just not been good at all. He's had some flashes. And Shaedon Sharpe has shown these moments where it's 5 games where it's he's really good. And then things change on the roster and he doesn't have that same impact, that same oomph. Development is neither linear nor guaranteed. It's up and down, and these guys are going to be up and down. And Scoot has had a rocky beginning to his career, so we'll see what the rest of the ride looks like. But these are cornerstones. These are the type of players franchises would love to trade for. These are your most valuable players. That's your trade rankings. I'm sure you disagree. Or maybe you agree and you just want to send a nice note. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com or sound off in the YouTube comments. I know you will. So that's going to do it for today's show. Come back. No if on that. Come back. We do this every day, 5 days a week. And you're listening to Tuesday show. And on Tuesday evening, the Blazers play the Phoenix Suns. So that means on Wednesday, we'll have a recap of the Suns game. looking ahead, Thursday, they play against the Washington Wizards. We'll look ahead to that game. We'll recap it on Friday. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and it's also on YouTube. So tell your friends about the program, and then come back for tomorrow's show. We'll recap a game against the Suns, see if the Blazers can get back on the right side of winning. That's your Blazers trade rankings. That's what I think. Share this one with your friends. Maybe you can find something to argue about with someone in the mail room. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.